Choip, choip, choip. Choip, choip, choip.
I don't know about you, but I would not have expected a tent to be this watertight. Was the original plan a portable aquarium where the audience drowns? Welcome to Penarium, the circus of human death and rarely survival. You players will leave the newest contestant, farm lad enticed by the promise of excitement, trapped to become the newest object of entertainment. Not much else to it story-wise. Each level, the director, who looks like Guy Fawkes if he got a taste of how the other half lived, gives you instruction and badgers you a bit. They're a sadist who revels in your death, actually quite common in gaming. And it's not exactly the best example of its use either. The game had like 2 good gags in it, which isn't as few as it sounds like when you consider how short it is. It only took me 4 hours to complete, so 2 good gags in that amount of time isn't that bad. And Willie's transition over time is pleasant in a menacing way, if the twist is a bit predictable. It's not much, but it's something of a story. Musically, it plays nice, fun, spooky Carnival of Doom music. Doesn't have many tracks though. Whoa, that music? Being killed by some kind of giant worm? Is the director Beetlejuice? And the game doesn't have much visual variation either. 3 2D arenas with 3 different backgrounds. It's not colorful either, very drained, a lot of browns, some grey. Even the marquee-esque lighting isn't that bright. But I feel it looks nice. It reminds me of the Great Depression, an era when this mode of entertainment would have been more viable. And by that I mean the kind of big top master of ceremonies thing and not Bloodsport. Through that lens, the game is actually colorful for its style. Visually not that stimulating, but fortunately the gameplay leaves very little time for being this feat. I mean appreciating the visuals. It's a 2D platformer where you jump from platform to platform, collecting items until you reach the value the level sets out as the win condition. Barrels usually. Apparently the director's showmanship has its limits. Sometimes you collect balloons in the order that they spawn before they pop. Other times you have to collect parachuting bottles before they reach the floor and break, because they contain ingredients for the director's homemade lotion. And on occasion you have to press colored buttons in a particular order in a Simon Says fashion. And as you've no doubt noticed, there are no enemies. The only obstacles in your way are the traps above and below. It's actually quite tricky. It has simple controls: left, right, spacebar, press it twice to double jump. End of controls. So you better carefully and quickly observe your surroundings, lest the machine gun turret wrap around the screen and end this attempt. And that's it, a bunch of increasingly difficult levels in the campaign. Apart from that, it has an arcade mode, where you earn coins to purchase power-ups, that can be activated in this mode after enough playtime has passed. Try and get as many barrels and coins as possible, die, buy power-up. Try the more difficult arenas, get more coins, yada yada. And lastly, there's Samescreen Multiplayer with the soothing addition of split pad play. But unfortunately, it's not controller flexible. It has co-op or versus mode, traps still in play. The game is cheap on Steam, 109 Rand full price, 16 Rand 35 on sale. That's 4 Rand 9 cents per hour of gameplay, which is okay. Not amazing, but okay. Maybe you can squeeze more out of it through in-between play or multiplayer, but at least to download it's quite small, as it only takes up 125.67 megabytes on the hard drive. And it works on the Warhorse without incident, and the test confirmed that the game had a nice in-between game feel when I played the arcade mode. And stereotypically it's kid-friendly, only as pixel blood. Maybe Willie's transformation can be a bit intense, but that's a stretch. And yeah, sure, Willie's body has a tendency to just let go of all his limbs when he dies, but otherwise fine. The game's compact, has fun, tight platforming. It's very simple and focused. It can be tricky to dodge traps for sustained periods of time. Yeah, you better relax in between the levels. It has good spooky carnival music, if not that many tracks. It has good visuals, pallid and depression-esque. Tiny pixels too. It's just not that stimulating. Only has you looking at a few screens for the entire game. It's not just a background problem, not that much changes in the foreground either, apart from the movement of the traps. On the maybe side, there's not much story. Sure, Willy coming around to Penarium is pleasing in an angry way, but the director's sadism is a tad cliche. On the con side, the platform structure stays mostly the same throughout the game, as do the objectives. That can make the game repetitive. Fortunately, the game is bite-sized enough that it can offer you some vigorous work. Sure, the game isn't groundbreaking, but it's a nice diversion. Come on, play as our protagonist, Willy. Poor dear, constantly trying to whistle through the pain, but nothing doing. Unfortunately, we're stuck doing training for a completely different skill set. Unfortunately, it really does seem that it pays to be bad. Just look at the size difference between the Dark Lord's base and the King's castle. His daughter was kidnapped and it's up to you to save her. Well, that's what they say you'll be doing, but you do get a bit sidetracked. A lot. That's the point of the game. The game has 100 different endings, and achieving them is the real goal. Evil endings, as well as endings that are as close to good as the funny focus of the writing will allow. I didn't do a tally, but I believe most of them involve you dying. Some require the usage of items, others require the same item usage but on different characters. Sometimes small deviations in actions lead to different payoffs. Some just mess with you. They can be genuinely funny and thus rewarding. They can even be rewarding to achieve, because at the start there's nothing to help you in figuring out where and how to trigger them. Just employ logic and curiosity. Morbid curiosity, some may say. You'll be able to find at least a few of them, and then you'll start finding hints in a bit more direction. And eventually you'll get a compass to help you point out the where. But even with all that help, sometimes the how can still escape you. So each new ending gives you a jolt of discovery, a sense of achievement, progress, humor, and more humor after you respawn in your house. Wait, was this one intentional? Sure, there may be flaws in imprisoning people for long periods of time, but even considering that, 4 years for a murder rap seems kind of low. And sometimes, depending on the ending, you get a new look and name to complete the joke. Some endings are hard to find and require uncovering secret places. And others require thought, as each item you collect decreases your platforming height. Because, weight. And that can make some routes unfeasible. Eventually, you won't be able to jump at all. There's even an ending associated with taking this too far. I'm not even going to show it to you. I'm pretty sure you can guess what happens. At times, the task is figuring out how to take this item from one end of the map to the other, without accidentally triggering an ending you already saw along the way. It can be frustrating having limited mobility and not knowing how to proceed, but since a lot of endings are discoverable, a win is usually not too far away. Honestly, the game is a whole lot more fun than I thought it would. It's not too difficult to get most endings, but I was quite into it. I drank it up and enjoyed the chase. And as you can see, rather conveniently, they tell you during the load screen how many people achieved your percentage of endings found. I reached 123%. I believe that's close to maximum. Not that many people go this far. And thus perhaps the average gamer won't share my delight at this game. I mean, for me, some of the endings were hard enough to find that I employed a walkthrough, like 5 endings and a few secrets. It's not fun traveling over the map you already traveled over a few times, looking for a specific ending you didn't find yet, just to have a different one trigger. And it's even less fun with that weight problem I mentioned. The platforming element of the game is fluid but non-dangerous and slow, floating and free. Fall damage isn't a thing unless there's an ending for it. You can survive this, yet die like this. You can be damaged by the odd minion, but dying that way is also an ending, and the combat is simplistic. Even the mechanic of you having health in this game is a touch wasteful, but I guess you seeing this every single time you accidentally touch one of them would be extremely annoying. Maybe the game is more like a choose-your-own-adventure game, except it just has endings instead of branching narratives. Visually, the game does have its cute aspects and its better-looking areas, but on the whole, it doesn't really look great. A very undetailed, chunky pixel art style. There's a lot of barren expanse and rock, and the color scheme doesn't help. Grey, pale green, pale brown, dark purple, a lot of it. Just look how absurdly clean the sewer is. as I said, undetailed. The visuals are more functional, really. Just look at how industrial some of the endings can look, with that all business text and greyish black background. Musically, it has some chiptune stuff that fits quite well, mostly inspired by classic games. The starting music kind of reminded me of Pokemon. While a great deal of these tracks are serious in nature, this one you'll be hearing a lot of emphasizes the comedic lean of the game. Their version of wah-wah, which is weird because you're not losing, you're winning by failing. Story-wise, you can argue that this game is mostly story. It focuses on that more than any other aspect. But it's less a story and more a succession of jokes. Nothing wrong with that. And that begs the question, is it funny? Well, a great deal of the humor is referential in nature, and I suppose the amusement comes from the surprise, subverting our expectations, sometimes in unreal ways, sometimes to mock gaming, or other elements of media. Sometimes, arguably, it just goes slapstick. And I loved all this. Nice little payoffs. And even though the humor does go referential at times, I feel like it doesn't get bogged down in it too much. Maybe shows it off more as the respawn costume, which is quite neat. One of the cuter elements I mentioned. Besides, the payoffs do tend to be kind of dark and bloody, which some of us use as an incorrect substitute for clever and mature humor. Plus, the game's delivery is kind of deadpan. No voiceovers, just a slow typing of text. And those chunky pixels do help here, because not being able to see an expression helps make it funnier. So I do feel that this game is funny. Because of these features, I feel like it will land with more people than otherwise. Not only was the game more fun than I thought it would be, it was longer too, as it took me 16 hours to complete this much of the game. As the stats show, not many people will go this far. I once read a review where someone said this game is kind of like a scavenger hunt, trying to find all the ways in which you can die. I was paraphrasing, but essentially yes, that's what this game is. So remember this statement when considering how long you'll play this game. The game is cheap on Steam, 68 Rand full price, 34 Rand on sale. That's 2 Rand 13 cents per hour of gameplay, which is quite good. And it does have quite a small download size, as it takes up 419.22 megabytes on the hard drive. And as far as I could tell, it worked on the Warhorse perfectly. Stereotypically, even though undetailed, perhaps not kid-friendly, pixel sex, violence, maybe a joke using the word hobo, even implied bestiality, although actually that was quite cute. The game has funny short endings, with funny enough writing, where death is fun and there's a lot of them. Some of the humor is referential, but not that much of it, plus most of the joke delivery is rather deadpan, and maybe that takes the sting out of any of the shortcomings. But I believe as long as you don't try and find it unfunny, you'll find it funny. At the very least worth a short gaming stint. The endings and secrets are rewarding to find, and the game in general is very light-hearted and fun. Unique in purpose. Sure, you can say it's not that unique, it's just a visual novel that's way more visual, but that's quite harsh. On the maybe side, you don't fail in depth. The platforming and combat are very simple. More common is you failing because you collected the wrong items and can't trigger the ending you want. Thus this game is closer to puzzle in genre than anything else. And I suppose you can say the story or the humor is second most important. And in that spurt, I guess it does compare fairly well. On the con side, the game kind of has an ugly pixel art style. Not detailed and kind of unpleasant in color palette. It does have some better looking areas, and some of the main characters' costumes are really cute. But yes, the game has some grating stuff in this realm. Maybe a touch harsh to put it as a con instead of a maybe. You consider it. But really, the dark purple lands and the mountains to the west, not great. The game can also get repetitive when you're trying to get variation endings, or endings that trigger on the same spot on the map. Having to traverse that much of the map again, especially if the journey was for nothing because you don't have the right items. At least you can unlock shortcuts. But that doesn't always help. Seemingly a large portion of cons here, but I loved it. Come on, play it and unlock some new costumes. Did they get permission to do this? I don't know. Would you know who allowed them to show Link do some of the stuff I mentioned?
choip, choip, choip. Choip, choip, choip.